Welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. Just me here today for the intro and outro for this episode. And today I'm really excited to have Jayme Amos from Ideal Practices on. He's somebody that really specializes in startups, and so he's somebody I really wanted to have on this season. I actually tried to get him on last season because I really like what he has to say about vision. And so I wanted him to talk about acquisitions and vision in that sense, but I think when you listen to the episode, you'll see why he's a much better guest for season 3, talking about startups. So I'll just stop right there. It's a great interview. I did want to apologize. This week and next week, I had a little bit of an issue with my recording, and so it kind of cuts in and out a little bit, and so I do apologize about that. I have it fixed, but it was an issue for this week and next week, and I appreciate you guys hanging in there through the season. I really appreciate you guys, and everyone's been so supportive. And so I look forward to hearing from you, as always, and we'll go ahead and jump right to the episode with Jayme Amos. I have with me here today Jayme Amos from Ideal Practices, and I'm really excited about the episode today. We have a great episode planned for you guys, and so Jayme's a startup enthusiast in the same way that I'm, very passionate about acquisitions. I don't think I've made my feelings on acquisitions, unknown. I think pretty much everyone who listens to the podcast knows how I feel, and I think Jayme has that same enthusiasm for startups. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. So Jayme, how you doing today? Jayme?
Oops, I think I hit the wrong button. Sorry. I said acquisitions. George, I had no idea. You never told me.
Do you want me to do that again?
No, it's good. I think I hit the mute button or something. No, it's an honor to be here, my friend. I know how passionate you guys are about the acquisitions topic and how you've helped doctors all over the country on that topic. The methodology that I understand that you guys use is fantastic. The reputation you guys have from people who you and I both have deep admiration for and respect for their integrity and their professionalism in topics like, residency faculty and attorneys who are recognized nationwide in dentistry, people like those who you and I both admire you and what you're doing. So hats off to you. Love the acquisitions topic, even if I started off with some sarcasm and pretended I didn't know.
Yeah, no worries. So, Jayme, tell us a little about your background and, what got you into this and, and startups specifically.
So let's see. I actually started, I'm not a dentist. In case that disclaimer may need to be given in case anybody wants to jump off the recording right now. What? He's not a dentist. Get out of here. So I have a degree in business, and I studied in Europe and Latin America and in the States. And when I got out of undergrad, I just loved the idea of small business. So I started a company right out of undergrad, and we did over $1 million in the first year. It was nothing to do with dentistry at all. It was actually a recruiting firm for engineers and scientific people. We had 30-some people on the payroll real fast, and I ended up selling a business just a couple years later. I did well, and I bought a bunch of real estate, commercial and residential. And interestingly, I started to see some patterns between the small business experiences I had and the small business growth that I saw work, and when it was combined with the right real estate strategies. So through all the negotiations and demographics and all those things on the real estate side, I saw this connection, almost these patterns and these opportunities when the two were married together properly, meaning the demographics, the real estate topic, combined with the small business growth topics.
And this is just generic small businesses, right?
Yeah, those were all businesses. I saw all those things connecting. I hadn't done any work with dentists at that point. But then I got a call from my undergrad buddy. I won't use his last name for reasons you'll see in just a second here. He called me up and said, Jayme, I heard you sold your company, and I'd love to ask a favor of you. I'm about to finish dental school. And I said, oh, no way. I forgot that you went to dental school. That's awesome. He said, oh, I need your help. I said, anything you need. What can I do? And he said, could you please be my boards patient? I said, I don't know what that is, but sure, no problem. I'll be a boards patient. Unfortunately, I didn't, this is embarrassing now to say this, I had no idea how important the boards patient topic was at the end of dental school. And as a result, I was 45 minutes late to my buddy's boards exam.
Whoa.
And as you might guess, he failed because of going overtime.
Oh, man.
Oh, right? Kind of like a gut punch, like,
Oh, gosh.
brutal. Now, in full disclosure, I thought I was the bomb at that point in my life, apparently, because I looked Joe in the eyes, and sweat is dripping off his forehead, and he's just losing his mind at the moment. I said, Joe, don't worry about it, man. Look, I got you. Like, I'll talk to your professors. Just tell them to come. I'll take care of it. Tell them to come over, and I'll get this cleared up. No, it doesn't work that way. So anyway, that was my first experience with dentists. As a profession, outside of being just a patient, that was my first experience, and I learned. I could jokingly say that I learned through all of that how gracious and how kind dentists are, how good-hearted they are, because Joe and I are still very good friends. We still talk every once in a while, and our kids know each other, see each other from time to time. So anyway, but I've been very fortunate to recognize that dentists across the country, even now 10 or 15 years later, dentists are like that. I mean, good-hearted, generous, kind, caring, compassionate, and maybe even forgiving of the bozos who step into their chair, like me. So anyway, that's kind of how we started. Through that, I got introduced to some other dentists, and interestingly, one said, "Hey, I'm an associate here. Could you help me get out? I'm just not happy." He's kind of, almost whispering to me, "I need to get out of this place. I'm making a great living, but I got to get out of here. Can you help me start up a practice with the real estate stuff you do and the small business stuff that you've done before? Could you help?" And I was real honest. I said, "I don't know. I think what I do with other businesses and with real estate and what I did with my business, I think it would work. But I don't know. So let's try." And interestingly, in just the first couple of years, he was already double the national average, which at the time was 1.2 million in collections for his practice, which 10 or 15 years ago, that was a lot. Even back, it's a lot now. But back then, that was a whole lot for a startup private practice.
Wow.
So we saw that it worked really well. And now we've helped doctors all over the country do the same and better, and make doctors real happy. It's not all about the money. It's not at all. We make sure that doctors open practices they absolutely love. I love startups. I love the impact that entrepreneurialism has on communities, on people's lives, and the dignity that it can create and the opportunities for personal growth. It's just so rewarding and fulfilling, and I speak as a small business owner on behalf of doctors who want to open up successful, enjoyable startups. So anyway, that's my monologue. I'm stepping off my soapbox.
You're making me look bad, because when people ask me my favorite part about acquisitions, I always say cash flow. And you're talking about all this other stuff, that I'm joking, but I think you talking about that really shows why I wanted you on the show, because I think you bring a different perspective to startups. But real quick, before we jump into that, how long ago was that first startup that you did?
I don't remember the exact year. I should get clear on that. 2004, maybe 2005.
Wow.
So what's that?
You've been doing that for a while then.
13 years? Yeah. I say 10 to 15 because it's easier to do the math. I guess it's 13, maybe 14 years.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then now, you have Ideal Practices, and so you guys help doctors all around the country do their startups, and you guys are extremely passionate about it. And so, but you've said to me, and we've talked about it, and I think you've said it on your show as well, you don't think startups are for everybody. And so True. I want you to kind of outline who you think startups are for and who they aren't for.
Wow. Yeah. Such a personal question. As I think through even my own personal journey of being a small business owner, in startups in particular, and as I look at the doctors who we help open successful startups, the things that I know are meaningful and compelling to the doctors who do it right. And this is for doctors who open startups the right way. Because if you do it the wrong way, you're going to hate it on many levels. You'll hate it because you're not cash flowing, to your point, George. You'll hate it because it's in the wrong area, or it doesn't represent you well, or you have a startup that, it wasn't open properly, so you're either constricted and you can't grow enough, or it's too big, so your debt servicing is crushing you. You open a startup the wrong way, and I promise you will hate it. But if you do it the right way, when you open a startup the right way, the things I really like, and the things our clients tell us they like, are things like, here's one. There's a doctor, her name is Nadia in Florida. She said, there's a night and day difference of the quality of life I get to experience. Like the quality of life, kind of the intangible quality of life. And she's referring to things like she has a newborn son, and she's literally able to design a practice that will allow her to have her son in his own space in the facility. And it was designed that way. The actual floor plan was designed that way. Or a doctor like a doctor who we just helped open in the Midwest. He opened his practice. He's got 8 operatories now. And this is kind of cool. We might want to talk about this a little bit today. He has a great clinical skill set and great ambition. So the plan was built for him to go pursue those things. His 8 operatory practice is built physically, constructed in such a way that he can very quickly have he has a pre-approval for construction building to add on 4 more operatories. So he's 8 operatories now, and he can grow into 4 more with almost like the flip of a switch. He's already approved. He already has the permitting process has already been kind of set up in his building and the building code process. And very interestingly cool. For that guy, he actually, here, let me read you a message I just got from him just last Wednesday. There he is. Danny says, at 1:14 a.m., I get a message from Danny last Wednesday. Here, I'll read it verbatim. Missed $1 million in collections by $4,800 for the first year. ... So close. I think to myself, dude, give yourself a little credit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's from a cold scratch startup. 0 business experience. He didn't know a soul in that town. We actually helped him move from Alaska. So we went from Alaska to the Midwest. So he didn't know a soul. He had the right process in place. So when I think about people who want to open a startup, I think of people who want to design things like my future growth for myself, for my profession, for my career. I think of people who want control over things like, what hours do I feel like working? Do I want to have space for my newborn child in the space? I think of things like, when do I want to take CE? That's up to me. When do I want to do that? I think of things like, what kind of culture do I want in my own practice? Do I want a team who is committed to me from day one, like 100% sold out, committed, on board, almost like it's like a cultural movement. Like, I'm committed to this doctor because of what they stand for. Or even the patients. I love the fact that with a startup, patients come into the practice committed to that practice and that doctor. So one of the things that I think is unfortunate in the comparison of acquisitions and startups is this. To answer your question, George. Sorry, I feel like I'm yammering on.
No, you're good.
In private practice ownership, as compared to corporate, in private practice ownership, the double-edged sword in dentistry is that private practice owners have a secret weapon that allows patients to commit to you as an individual. In private practice ownership, patients choose you as the clinician and you as the owner. Patients choose you, right? I mean, you've seen that, George.
Yeah.
Right? They choose you. Well, the sad part, the flip side of that, the double-edged sword part of that is when you go to purchase a practice, they didn't choose you, right?
Oh, yeah.
They didn't choose it. The patient didn't. They chose Dr. Senior from like 30 years ago, right? They chose that building, but they didn't choose you. They didn't choose you as a clinician. So now that doesn't mean those things cannot be overcome. That obviously they can be overcome with enough effort and enough grind and enough planning. Those things, there are strategies to offset some of those averages of percentages of patients who will leave the practice and things. Those things can be mitigated, I suppose. But the point is, they didn't choose buyer. They didn't. In a startup, they literally are forced to choose you, right? So it's almost predetermined that patients will love you because they chose you. I look at it a little bit like going to Chick-fil-A. You ever been to Chick-fil-A before?
Yep.
And at the Chick-fil-A where you go, most Chick-fil-A's have a line that kind of winds up to the cash register. Have you seen that? There's like almost like a snake line that goes up. So in Chick-fil-A, there's a snake line that leads to the registers. Whereas a place like McDonald's, you just get behind the registers, right? You just line up in 3 lines. So the people who choose Chick-fil-A, if they go in, there's nothing right or wrong about the way that you go up to the cash register. But when people choose Chick-fil-A, they're choosing it because of the Chick-fil-A chicken and the Chick-fil-A line and the Chick-fil-A experience, all the elements of that cultural experience inside of Chick-fil-A. They're choosing Chick-fil-A. Now, if McDonald's went in and bought Chick-fil-A and said, guess what? We're now serving burgers and we're getting rid of the snake line. We're doing three lines. Some people might stay at Chick-fil-A. They might keep going, but other people might say, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. So I think that's the cool thing with startups. People are there because they choose you, and they choose the culture, and they agree to the cultural elements of that practice as it's set up from day one. So those are some of the reasons why I like startups. So does that help?
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point on the cultural point. With, the team, you can have your vision and you can have your team and everything set from day one. So that, you hire somebody, you hire everybody that never worked for anybody else, at your practice. You don't have to do like a switching or changing of a culture. You just establish it the way you want it. So I think that's a very, really, really great point. And I think it's a great contrast. Now, for the, who do you...
program called the Dental MBA. It's the startup dental MBA process. It's part of what we do when we help doctors open startups. It's sort of the business foundation, the business structure, the processes, the protocol, the systems, even the hiring of the first couple of people, the scripting of the phone protocol, the new patient experience, right? All of those things that's the business of the practice. It's not a binder full of papers that you stick on the shelf. That's called a $2,000 book from the ADA, right? It's not that.
Yeah.
This is actually a custom creation and intentional choices about the business of a practice. So with a startup, those things are when it's done the right way, when a startup is done the right way, those things are all predetermined. The team is pre-trained on the way you want it done. Because it's sad when there's some people who come in, or people who may have worked at a practice for 20 years, and they say, well, that's not the way we do it around here. Or, well, I don't know if the patients are going to like that. Or, well, Dr. Senior did it this other way for 20 years. No. With a startup that you decide, if it's open the right way, all that stuff is pre-planned. And when patients come to your practice, they're saying yes to you and your protocol. When the team comes in and says yes to that job, to that paycheck, hopefully we can turn it into a movement, not just a paycheck, and a cause, not just a job. If we can do those things well, then the team members are committed to a bigger picture than just this is the way Dr. Smith used to do it. So if that gives you some ideas, that's...
Yeah. And I think, now on the flip side of it, who do you think a startup is not for? Or who when somebody reaches out to you, you're like, maybe it's not the best route for you.
I actually like to... I love the fact that acquisitions are right often. Some of the times when I think acquisitions are better, almost, dare I say, unequivocally better, there are really 2 criteria that I personally like to use when I say, listen, if you can find these couple of things, go buy that practice. Don't even bother with a startup. So the 2 things are, number 1 is the concept of a surfer dentist only buying a surfer dentist's practice. What I mean is, this came from a discussion with a doctor who was a surfer, who did purchase a surfer dentist's practice. This doctor had a practice that could see the ocean, and you can probably imagine on great waves days, the practice would shut down early, right? Patients would get reappointed or rescheduled on days when there were great waves. It was actually like part of the practice culture, and it was okay.
Wow.
Right? And if you're not a surfer dentist and you go in and you buy that place, the team is going to expect on great waves days that the place shuts down. You're like, no, we got to stay open. We got to crank out production. And they say, whoa, dude, hang on. We got to go surf, right? Because they've been there for 20 years surfing. You get it?
Yeah.
Same with patients. Meanwhile, if you're a surfer dentist and you go to purchase a practice that doesn't have a surfer culture and you want to take off because the waves are good that day, the patients are going to think you're crazy, right? You're going to what? So I think if you're a surfer dentist, you should only buy a surfer dentist practice. And that's not just for surfing, of course. That's for all cultural aspects of practice ownership. Who you are, who you want to be known as, the philanthropy that you want to contribute to in the community. the style of marketing that you would enjoy doing in your community, the kind of treatment planning that you're comfortable with. Those things are all to serve for dentists. It's better to purchase a practice when the cultural elements are perfectly in alignment with yours. That's the first one.
Okay.
The second aspect of acquisitions that I think are unequivocally better are when a practice is doing over $1 million in production. And I know that sounds weird. Like, what? How come you can just say that with like it's an actual thing? Well, over time, you've probably seen this too, George. It's not until a practice hits about $1 million in production that the practice has the opportunity to build systems for the practice to run like a real business. Most practices under $1 million of production, they're kind of running on the brute force of the personality of the dentist, as opposed to systems running the business. And that's really what small business is. Any business is really just a compilation of systems that humans run, right? Systems that humans run. That's what a business is. So I like to say that if you're buying $1 million practice, if you're buying a practice and it's over $1 million, then you're actually having the opportunity to purchase a business, as opposed to just buying a part-time job. If you're buying a practice that's over $1 million, there's a good opportunity, there's a good chance that it's a business full of systems instead of just trying to replace someone else's brute force of personality in a small, undervalued or lower valued practice, rather. So Those are a couple times when I think acquisitions are obviously better.
I love QOptics loops to the point where I reached out to them and asked them if they wanted to sponsor season 1 of my podcast. The first time I put on their loops, I thought to myself, why can't everyone do this? Why can't everyone nail my angle of declination that I want? And the only reservation I had about QOptics was that their magnification couldn't go high enough for what I wanted. Well, I am proud to announce that QOptics now offers an expanded line of their prismatic loops. So you can go all the way from 2.5 to 3 to 3.5, 4, all the way up to 4.5 in their same frame that everyone loves. This is awesome because every other loops company that I've used in the past has always said, oh, well, yeah, we can do 4 or 4.5, but not in that frame. We have to go up to this other frame that isn't as ergonomic, and we can't push the angle of declination. And after 3 weeks of using it, my neck's hurting. I'm like, what's the point of using loops if my neck hurts? And I love more magnification. I love being able to see that big cartoon tooth at 4.5x and just know that my margin is money because I can feel and see it. Oh, and did I mention they're through the lens? This is no flip down, flip up, whatever you want to call it. These bad boys aren't going anywhere. If you are ready to upgrade both your magnification and your ergonomics, you can email sales@q-optics.com with the promo code SP16 for $100 off of the loops alone or $300 off a loop and light combo for our podcast listeners only. That's SP as in shared practices 16 to sales@qoptics.com.
And I think I'm going to add something to the million. I really like the million though. I personally like, higher producing practices with more collections, but also I think multiple doctors in the practice, or if there has been multiple doctors, I think an element to not just one doctor for the whole duration of the practice's existence will also force some of those systems to be put in place as well.
I love it. So smart. Totally agreed. Yeah, because with a practice that has multiple doctors, it is a requirement that the systems in the doctor owner's mind are running without him or her in the room.
Exactly.
Right? There must be systems there for that person, that doctor, to not be in the room. So I love that. I think that's really smart. Multi-doctors. That's great.
Now, I think the big downside for me, looking at a startup, is time. I mean, is that looking at it as somebody who maybe isn't as in love with it as you are? That's to me like the big objection that I have. So what is, what is your kind of, in people that you work with, what is the timeline for a startup typically?
Well, it's a good question. I think maybe a more important question is, what's the rush?
True. I think that goes back to personality. I think some people are more impatient than others, and especially if somebody's in a good situation, where they're happy in their associateship, I think, the timeline for a startup might be more manageable for them versus somebody who's more eager to get into practice ownership. But for me, that was like the biggest reason why.
Like, get me out of here, right? Like,
I just wanted to get started. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would love to have a startup be able to be opened in like 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. That would be awesome. But the right timeline that we have found consistently across the country is aiming for an expectation of about 12 months. Now, just so you know, it's about 12 months. There's a Dr. Jerry outside of Philadelphia who we helped open a practice. He too was just a hair under $1 million in his first 12 months, and he opened in 11 months. So I'm not saying that it has to take 12 months, but I think it's fair to anticipate 12 months. But so much of that is dependent on how the negotiations go, particularly in topics like real estate and construction, and there are some pressure points on the timeline that are reliant on the performance of outside vendors. So my team's really good at holding people accountable to those things, but that's not really the point here. I agree with you. It does take longer than just sort of snapping your fingers and buying a practice. But what I usually like to say is, if you know what you want, if you know what's going to make you happy, or you at least know that you want to be happy in a practice that you create, if you have a way that you want to do it, and you're willing to go through the right process of opening a startup, then, I don't know, is a couple extra months worth doing it right for a couple extra decades?
Oh, yeah. Right? I'm totally with you. And, kudos to your team. 12 months is impressive. From, the timelines that I hear about, 12 months is really awesome. When do you guys start 12 months from location selection, or is it 12 months from decision to do a startup?
Oh, such a great question. Yeah, and please know, in full disclosure, I can't take the credit. My people on my team have, our floor plan designer, for example, he has 4,000 floor plans of experience. Or Steven, who's our director of consulting, he's now helped 573 startups, right? Right? With that level of experience, you start, in his case, you start to see some patterns, and you start to find some opportunities. And here's the scary thing that I see in dentistry right now. I see so much chatter and so much noise about startups, where I see people on Facebook groups or people on Dentaltown or whatever throwing out these like hard fought for opinions about startups. And oftentimes they're from people who've never even opened a startup. Like, what? You've never opened a startup, yet you sound like you're willing to die on this topic that you're giving your opinion on. Or worse, people who've done one startup. They have one startup of experience. And they say, I opened a startup in this other town fighting for a different ideal patient in a different year with a different practice vision, and you should do it this way too. And I think, whoa, that's crazy. That was for a different patient in a different time, in a different land, for a different kind of practice. That's weird. So I feel bad that a lot of doctors are sort of misguided on some of that online chatter. I find that to be pretty unfortunate. So for whatever that's worth, I do think when it's done right with a team, hundreds or thousands of experiences, you can keep the timeline short. To your point, the timeline can be compressed. Let's say somebody like Cliff. Cliff has now been a part of negotiating 1,000 equipment and construction deals. 1,000, right? That's crazy. So when a guy like him steps in and starts negotiating with the construction companies or the equipment companies, oftentimes he's been to that show more than they have, meaning the vendor, right? He's been to that discussion more times than the vendor themselves have been in that discussion. So anyway, that's some of the power of being able to tap into the accelerated timeline with the right people, with the right experience.
And with the right experience, is there a certain timeline of these? So let just for our listeners to kind of get an idea. So my understanding of timeline, have somebody who's done 0 startups, is you have location selection, lease negotiation, construction, equipment selection, ending construction, getting everything installed, and then you have and then hiring, training. I'm skipping stuff, but that from a general overview, that's kind of how it works. Am I kind of right in that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we call that the 13 stages. But yeah, George, awesome. I love the fact that you just have this ability to see clearly the things like this. Yeah, all those stages, we call them the 13 stages. 13 very specific delineated topics that start and stop at certain points.
So,
And it is, yeah, those 13 stages go through and they kind of manage the process.
yep. So in that, like, your 13 stages, or, just the general outline, what step is kind of the big hang up that my idea was it's always location, selection and lease negotiation. But, obviously I want your take on that.
Yeah. So oftentimes I'll be on a stage, like at maybe this year's county meeting, I was on stage, or in Jamaica, I was on stage talking, or at the Profitable Dentist program event. I've been on some of these stages, and sometimes I'll get peppered with a question like, "Hey, Jayme, you got your 13 stages. Which one's the most important?" Right? So, like a fair question. I think. Well, you like sports. You and I were just NBA finals, right? Do you remember last year's Super Bowl?
Are we talking about the Eagles this past year?
So no, not this year. I'm from Philly, so that one I'm not allowed to talk about that game because I'm biased. So that was the Patriots and the Eagles. The year before that was the Patriots and Falcons, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that's when the Patriots came back with that crazy, right there. They were down by like more points than any Super Bowl game in history at halftime, right? Down by more points than ever. Remember that game?
Yep.
At the end of the game, everybody knows. It was like, well, at the end of the game, Tom Brady is holding his trophy, and he's next to Terry Brad, the announcer with the bald, shiny head. He's all sweaty. Tom Brady's all sweaty, and the confetti is falling down from the sky. And Terry Bradshaw says to Tom Brady, the winning quarterback, the quarterback who's now achieved more than any quarterback in history, right? Wise, talented man. "Hey, Tom, you just won the Super Bowl, and my gosh, you came back from the impossible. What one play turned it all around?" I don't know if you saw this interview. "What one play turned it all around?" And Tom Brady says, in his wisdom, "If any one play went differently than it did, we would have had a very different outcome." I think a big Super Bowl doesn't go according to plan. A very different outcome. Sometimes people say, "Well, it must be." I would say, "Yeah, you're right. It's all of them. It's every one." If you don't have a location with great demographics, or if you don't have a location proper kind of facility, well, then it's really hard to attract the right ideal patients. If you're sending out marketing in the wrong region for the wrong demographics, you're not going to get a response, or at least not the response you want. You have a very different outcome. Or like a construction negotiation wrong, and you're $200,000 out of budget. One doctor actually told us he was $400,000 over budget because the contractor went out of business, and then he had to hire somebody else. It was crazy. So if any one of those things go wrong, it can completely implode the whole process. So that's why we like to say they all lean on each other. It's almost like the poles coming out of a Native American teepee, right? The little poles that stick out of the top. They all lean together, right? They'll lean together, and it is the leaves. So that's why we say these 13 stages are all very symbiotic, if you will.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a great response to a question that was probably difficult to answer. I really love the analogy, and I guess going through, maybe if you could highlight some of those stages and maybe things that you see other doctors doing, some common mistakes maybe, or some things that maybe some pitfalls that you could let our listeners see based on your experience.
Absolutely. So here's one that surprises most people. You want to have like an out of the box one, so kind of like, what? Never heard that before.
I'd love it.
One of those. Just going to give you one of those.
Go for it.
Okay. So there's a magazine named Efficiency in Group Practice. And I'm friends with the editor. Thank you for the magazine. He and I live outside of Philadelphia. My home in Philadelphia. We live near each other. So his name is Bill. And I called Bill and I said, "Bill, what is it that group practices, that corporate dentistry?" His magazine goes to all the corporate dentistry guys. So he interviews them, talks to the big names that we all know in corporate dentistry. I said, "Bill, what's the one thing that corporate dentistry does better than private practices?" Cool question, right? Like, what do they do? Like, what's the secret potion? And fascinatingly, he said, without a blink of an eye, philanthropy. Local philanthropy. And I said, what? I thought he was going to say, like, a secret marketing weapon, or like they're better funded, or venture capital. You know what I mean? So that's what Bill said.
So local philanthropy as in, just being helpful in the community type stuff?
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. Yeah, one of our clients, her name is Lauren. Lauren opened up outside of Denver, Colorado. And Lauren, through this process, we call it the GIVE process. We have a very sequential, systematic process to roll out this kind of a concept. Lauren ended up with 209 patients in her first 4 days, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Right? That's a lot of patients.
Oh, yeah.
Interestingly, now she and her husband, they love outdoor sports like mountain biking and kayaking, and their life kind of looks like an actual Instagram feed. They're always like pulling salmon out of the streams or like wrestling grizzly bears or riding their mountain bikes together. So Lauren's just an awesome person. So when we took her through this process, we helped her examine what her interests were and what local philanthropy she might want to be involved in. And there's a very strategic way of tying this all together that we won't go into here. But the end result for Lauren is that at the time of her grand opening, the nonprofit that she partnered with was a local mountain bike trail restoration group. So it's a group that restored the mountain bike trails because that's what she's interested in. That's what she's passionate about. So this organization, they invited their 1,000 mountain biker membership to Lauren's open house.
Wow.
Right? Like, whoa. So I saw some video. Lauren took a bunch of video and she sent it over to me. She said, check it out. It was so cool. She said, it was like a dream come true. And as I watched the video, what I saw was unlike any other grand opening I've ever seen. There were people on the grass playing cornhole. There were people standing outside with their mountain bikes. And it kind of felt and looked to me like a picnic. And in Lauren's mind, that was a dream come true. And that's what I love about startups. Now, her culture in that town is set. Like she has planted her flag with that crowd, those ideal patients, that community, that rhythm of the way she communicates with patients. I mean, you can imagine like people probably walked up with cases of beer and she's like, whoa, no, keep the mountain biker beer outside, but come in for a tour, right? So that's what's really cool about startups. You get to custom create and reverse engineer all of that. Like the stuff you really want to deep down enjoy and have your values be represented by. Like what reputation? With a startup, you get to decide what reputation you want. You literally get to pre-plan what that's going to be. And then you can create a strategy, reverse engineer it, so that you can have the reputation in the community that you desire to have before you even open. So going back to the local philanthropy thing, I believe that when implemented well, it is one of the most powerful things you can do to enjoy your practice more, to be known in a community in a beautiful way, and to attract patients and team members who are there for a big reason. Not just because of discounts, but they're there because of a big reason. Does that difference make sense?
Yeah, and I guess my whole, actually, I'll be honest with you, Richard is the one that really turned me on to your perspective on vision and culture. And, when we kind of brainstormed guests, he's actually somebody that I thinks highly of you and, wanted you on the show for that reason. And I hear what I've been hearing what you're saying the whole time. And if I'm being totally honest with you, I've, heard about a lot of startups opening, and I feel like the vision, it isn't a big part of a lot of other startups that I hear about. You know what I mean? When I think hearing what you're saying, it really has an opportunity to be a very big part of it. Is that?
I think it's all of it. Can I like be kind of like rude to anybody else who talks about startups ever on the planet? Like if you're not doing that, you're missing the best part. Like I want to scream. Not I want to. I mean, like guys, you're missing the best part about small. You have a chance for your values to be represented on a stage in your community called your small business. You have an opportunity to impact people's lives even outside of your four walls. By the values you carry and let out through those doors, you can impact people. So get this. One of our high-level consulting clients, she chose to have her, in this GIVE process, it's a 4 to 5 month process. So it's not just like slap a sticker on your website and call it a day. Like, ugh, that'll make me want to vomit. Like, this is not like quick, get a pretty ribbon and put it on your website. Ta-da! No, it's a 4 to 5 month process. So she, her name's Amy, she's in the Midwest. Amy chose the biggest cause that she is passionate about is the human trafficking epidemic. A heavy topic, right?
Yeah.
And, whoa. And in the Midwest, right, it's heavy. And in the Midwest, strangely, some of the highest levels of human trafficking are in her state. I'll leave her state nameless here, but she partnered with this organization, and now every time a new patient walks in her door, a portion of the new patient experience is devoted to supporting this cause. So here's something really cool that maybe some of your listeners can take away from this. What Amy decided to do is put a large plaque of the organization's logo, not her logo. The organization's logo goes on the wall behind the door that transfers patients from the reception area to the clinical area. In other words, they open the door and they see a big blue sign that says, "She has a name." That's the name of the organization. This big painting on the wall says, "She has a name." So now guess what happens, George? Every time patients come back for the 6-month visit, they remember that they are there as part of a mission. They're not there just because of the discounts. You get it?
Yeah, that's powerful.
So now, just so you know, I do the same thing. I'm not just like coming up with these wacky theories. I love small business ownership so much, and I put this into motion myself at Ideal Practices. Every time we open a startup practice in the United States, we provide the financial resources to open 10 startup businesses in third world countries. Now, they're made through nonprofit loans, through an organization that helps 10 people in third world impoverished areas start businesses. And for them, their businesses might be like a few dozen chickens, so they can get the eggs and they can sell the eggs out at market. Or they can get some land with some cattle or some goats or cows so they can get the milk and then provide for their family and create an income. Because the reason I do that, the reason Ideal Practices funds those experiences and funds those businesses is because that's life change. I know for sure that entrepreneurialism changes lives. Small businesses transform communities. And the people who miss that, I feel like they miss out on the best part of small business ownership. And that's why, from going back to my business in Europe, Credit Suisse, I've been in some big corporate buildings, what they were doing. And I thought that's cool if that's all you want. If you just want a big pile of money and numbers on a spreadsheet, awesome, go get that. Not interested. And that's why I love small business, because there's heart, because there's meaning, and because there's literal life change. You literally get the chance to change lives. That's why I love small business. That's why I love entrepreneurialism. So anyway, those are some of the things I get excited about. And that's why I like tying this in a very relevant way with our high-level consulting clients. So that's what I like about startups in dentistry. That's what I call vision.
When most people think about a startup, they think that they are expensive and time-consuming. I'm here today to tell you that they are right, but it doesn't have to be. Starting a dental practice presents a list of challenges, but when it comes to making decisions about where to purchase your dental equipment, I recommend Dental Planet. Dental Planet provides affordable, comprehensive services that simplify the startup, expansion, or renovation process while dramatically improving your ROI of the entire project. If you need equipment, Dental Planet has new, factory recertified, and Dental Planet certified pre-owned digital imaging systems. As you know, a lot of your success as a startup is based on your ability to provide a great experience for your patients. The same can be said about Dental Planet. They provide telephone, email, and remote support, as well as multiple financing solutions. Dental Planet is even more affordable than many of their competitors. All products include a warranty backed by a nationwide network of service providers, along with expert sales consultants and technicians. Thousands of more items, including dental supplies, are also available when you use Dental Planet. Buying equipment for your startup doesn't have to be expensive with Dental Planet. You can save between 40 to 60%. See how easy and affordable upgrading, replacing, or expanding can be when you team up with Dental Planet. Just mention Shared Practices to get a discount on your already low prices. Learn more at dentalplanet.com. Again, that's dentalplanet.com. Again, mention Shared Practices to get a discount on your entire order. That's really awesome, Jayme. I think from my perspective, as somebody who's in the process of buying a practice, I maybe finishing off this interview, I'd want to challenge you to maybe take that same community oriented, I guess concept and try it. I mean, for our listener who maybe is buying a practice right now, maybe has already made that decision, maybe it doesn't fit as seamlessly as it would with a startup, but how would you go about, maybe incorporating that? Maybe you already own a practice in your existing practice, maybe not through a startup.
And exactly. It can be done with not a startup also. The thing that I get excited about with a startup is the fact that people step in, patients and team members and your community reputation, they step into your world knowing that about you and getting excited about that with you. So anyway, now you know my bias about why startups are awesome.
No, I see it clearly. And I think, as I love the community aspect though. And I think more practices need to be doing that. But again, in a way you will be whatever cause you end up feeling so strongly for, you'll end up, relaying it to an audience that did not, originally sign up for that cause.
Yep. There's so that Dr. Lauren that I mentioned,
mm-hmm.
just so you know, she's in the top 10% of all practice owners in her 13th month. We have her in some tracking software.
Wow.
Dr. Danny, who I just mentioned earlier, he's got $1 million of collections, not production, collections in his first 12 months, or in his words, $4,800 less. We help a lot of people get a lot of patients, and success is a requirement. I don't want to leave this just on heart level. That's important. But profitability is imperative. If you don't focus on profitability and reverse engineer that before you open your startup, don't even start. And that's why it's so important to have a proven, consistently achievable plan. Because if you're not profitable, you go out of business, right? And with a startup, you have to be profitable. So I hope that's helpful. Don't focus just on the heart. You have to have the reverse engineered success plan in addition to that. And do you mind if I give a couple of resources so people can?
Please do.
Go?
Absolutely.
So I mentioned that 13 stages thing. Do you mind if I give out a free downloadable tool for that?
Absolutely.
If you go to idealpractices.com/13, it's real easy, just 13. And then, George, I love how you mentioned location. Do you remember I wrote a book on the topic?
Yes, I think I was. I bought it a few years ago, and I think I gave you an Amazon review actually on that book.
You did. Thank you for that. I remember. Thank you. You did, and it was very kind. So we're doing a free giveaway this year. We're giving away 1,000 books. If this year, if you're listening to this and it's still this year, you can check to see if they're still available. Until we have 1,000, you can go grab one. And if you would like a location book, it talks about all the location strategies, the foundational location strategies that work across the country. It's idealpractices.com/free. And you can see if you can get one of those. I ask that people cover the cost of shipping so I don't lose my shirt. The book still sells on Amazon, by the way, George. If people would prefer to spend the $67 that Amazon charges, you can do that, or you can get one for free at idealpractices.com/free. I feel like I talked a lot. Did this give you guys does this feel like this is helpful for your audience?
Oh yeah, and I think part of, I as a host, I tend to like to let the guest do a lot of the talking. And so much so that Richard has made fun of you sometimes. But, I think you really did a great job. And what I really wanted the audience to really get from the episode was how you really incorporate vision into a startup. And I think anybody listening to this definitely got that. So you definitely great job, Jayme. And I really appreciate you coming on today. I think our audience got a lot out of the episode. And really check out the 13 stages, that resource that he mentioned. And then also I have read his book and I gave it a great Amazon review. So you know how I feel about that.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Jayme.
Thank you for doing what you do, George. It is so cool to see how you're empowering doctors. Listen, anybody who's listening, please do what George says. Please do what Richard says. The fact that they have invested so much time and so much of their own personal resources in this. I know, George, a lot of it is a labor of love for the profession. I know you and Richard share regardless of startup versus acquisition, private practice ownership can and will thrive. But you have to do it right. Follow the resources of someone like George and Richard. Follow the resources of a proven, not a jerry-rigged, Facebook-led startup practice, but a proven startup practice path, a proven path. And private practice can and will thrive for a very long time. I see it all over the country. George, thank you for what you guys do. It's so cool. Thank you for having me on. This is a huge honor.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that. I think that's awesome. And thanks for coming on, Jayme. And I think audience really enjoyed it.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. I hope you guys loved that episode. I really loved what he had to say about, I think a couple things really stood out to me that I wanted to talk about. First, I think I emphasized it enough throughout the episode, but I just want to do it one more time, how impressive and I guess just how well thought out the startups with vision in mind and the community aspect that Jayme talks about, I think is just really impressive. And for me, I wish more people who are doing startups, if you're going to go through the process of doing a startup, it's obviously much more laborious and it takes a lot more of your time and it's a longer game. You're going to have slower growth or you're going to, take longer making the practice, a more established practice. I think you almost owe it to yourself to make it your vision and really spend a lot of time thinking about exactly what you want and tailoring everything in your entire process to that end goal. So I think that's something that Jayme does a really great job talking about. And I really enjoyed him on there because I feel like that's not something we've really emphasized this season so far. We've more emphasized the process, how to get it done, the things you need to be looking out, setting expectations, but we didn't really emphasize one of the biggest benefits, which is vision. And then I think the second thing, I don't think I can go in a single episode without talking about acquisitions. So, what he said about acquisitions, I also thought was really good, a really interesting point about how he feels like systems in place in a practice is a big benefit when you're looking at them and based on the size of the practice. There's going to be more or less defined systems based on how much they've had to adapt based on their size. So larger practices, have more volume most likely, and they've just had to develop systems to keep operating or to get to that size of collections. And so I thought that was an interesting point, hearing it said in that way. I thought that was it, I guess, just kind of made me understand it from a different perspective. And I thought that was worth sharing in the outro. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. I have a really good one next week. Jonas and I hop on with Term Tursunoff, who we had on the podcast before, and we talk about multi-practice ownership again. And it's the three of us. It's the first time that we've had two co-hosts on an interview. And so I'm looking forward to that one coming out next week. So stick around, and thank you for listening to the Shared Practices Podcast.